Everyone thought they knew exactly how the night would unfold. They expected the hits, the cheers, the encore. Instead, they would leave talking about something no one could have predicted. The arena fell into darkness. The roar of the crowd faded until even the smallest sound seemed impossibly loud. Then a single spotlight broke through the blackness. There stood Elvis Presley. Alone. He didn't greet the audience. He didn't flash his famous smile. He simply stood there, motionless, holding the microphone as though the next words would change everything. When the music finally began, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet, tender, almost fragile. The first lyric floated through the arena like a whispered secret, and something changed immediately. This didn't sound like a superstar performing for thousands. It sounded like a man speaking to one person. Every note carried longing. Every pause carried memories. Every word felt too personal to belong to a concert. The excitement that had filled the arena slowly gave way to silence. Fans who had been screaming only moments before now watched without moving. Some smiled through tears they couldn't explain. Others reached for the hands of the people beside them. No one wanted to interrupt what they were feeling. As the song grew more emotional, people began noticing something unusual. Elvis wasn't looking across the arena. His eyes kept returning to the same place. Again, and again, and again. The whispers started spreading from row to row. Who is he looking at? Is someone special here tonight? Was this planned? The questions traveled faster than the music. Yet no one had an answer. Then came the final chorus. Elvis closed his eyes and sang as though nothing outside that moment existed anymore. The last words lingered in the air long after the melody had faded. And then, silence. No applause. No movement. Even 20,000 people seemed afraid that making a sound would shatter whatever had just happened. Elvis slowly lowered the microphone. He took a deep breath, looked into the audience one last time. Then, without saying a single word, he stepped away from the spotlight, toward the edge of the stage, toward someone waiting in the crowd. In that instant, everyone understood the concert was no longer the story. A wave of confusion swept through the arena. No one had ever seen Elvis Presley leave the spotlight in the middle of a performance. The cameras scrambled to follow him. The giant screens showed every slow step as he walked down the stairs leading away from the stage. The music had faded into a gentle instrumental, leaving only the sound of thousands of hearts pounding in anticipation. The audience instinctively parted, creating a narrow path. No one spoke. No one dared. Every eye followed the man who had spent his life making the world watch him. Yet tonight, he seemed to notice only one person. Then, he stopped. Seated only a few rows from the stage was Priscilla. She looked up in complete surprise. For a brief moment, neither of them said a word. The entire arena disappeared. The cameras, the lights, the thousands of people surrounding them. None of it seemed to exist anymore. Elvis smiled softly. Not the confident smile that had filled magazine covers. Not the smile that had made millions of fans fall in love with him. This one was different. It was quiet, real, the kind of smile that only appears when words are no longer enough. He slowly reached into his jacket. The crowd leaned forward. A small velvet box appeared in his hand. A single gasp echoed through the arena. Within seconds, thousands of whispers became complete silence once again. Could this really be happening? Elvis looked into Priscilla's eyes, his voice barely louder than a whisper. Every stage I've ever stood on, every song I've ever sung, every dream I've ever chased, none of it has meant as much as this moment. His hands trembled slightly. Not from fear of the audience. From fear of hearing one answer. He slowly lowered himself onto one knee. The arena froze. Some fans covered their mouths. Others wiped tears from their faces before a single answer had even been spoken. Priscilla's eyes filled with tears. She tried to smile, but emotion overwhelmed her. For a few endless seconds, neither of them moved. The silence became almost unbearable. It felt as though time itself had stopped. Then Elvis gently opened the velvet box. Inside, a sparkling ring caught the light from the stage, sending tiny reflections across the arena. His voice trembled as he spoke. If there's one thing I've learned through every success and every lonely night, it's that a life filled with applause still feels empty without someone to share it with. He took a slow breath. Will you spend the rest of your life with me? The question hung in the air. No music. No applause. No distractions. Only silence. And 20,000 people waiting for one word that would change the night forever. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire arena stood frozen, as if time itself had decided to wait for her answer. 20,000 people watched in complete silence. No music. No applause. Just two hearts standing in the middle of a moment that felt bigger than the stage itself. Tears slowly rolled down Priscilla's cheeks. She looked at Elvis, then at the ring, before looking back into the eyes of the man who had just placed his heart in her hands. A gentle smile appeared through her tears. She gave the smallest nod. Then, almost too softly for anyone to hear, she whispered, "Yes." For one breathtaking second, the arena remained completely silent, as if no one could believe what they had just witnessed. Then everything exploded. Thunderous applause crashed through the arena. Thousands of people leaped to their feet. Cheers echoed from every corner. Some were laughing. Some were crying. Many were doing both. The sound was so overwhelming that it seemed to shake the entire building. Elvis closed his eyes with a smile of pure relief. He carefully slipped the ring onto Priscilla's finger. As soon as it caught the light, another wave of applause swept through the crowd. He stood, wrapped his arms around her, and held her close. The embrace lasted only a few seconds. Yet it felt like a lifetime. The orchestra slowly began to play again. Not loudly. Just enough to let the emotion speak for itself. Above them, thousands of tiny lights filled the darkness as people raised their phones, turning the arena into a sky of stars. The giant screens showed their smiles. Not the smiles of celebrities. Not the smiles of two people standing before a crowd. Just two people who had found something far more valuable than fame. The audience wasn't cheering because they had heard another great song. They were cheering because they had been reminded that even the brightest spotlight means little without someone to share it with. As Elvis gently took Priscilla's hand, they walked back toward the center of the stage together. No words were needed anymore. The music carried everything their hearts could not. The camera slowly pulled higher and higher. The glowing lights of the arena stretched endlessly beneath it. At the center stood two small figures, hand in hand, surrounded by a sea of people who would remember that night for the rest of their lives. And as the lights slowly faded into darkness, one thought remained. Sometimes, the greatest performance isn't the one that earns the loudest applause. It's the one that reminds the world that love will always outshine fame.